The BYU Cougars were robbed. Absolutely robbed. What in the heck am I talking about? Stick around and find out.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And more importantly, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. It's brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in today's episode. Coming up on today's show, we're talking about the robbery I referred to about BYU basketball. We'll also talk BYU football. Did Zach Wilson land in the perfect spot to rehabilitate his NFL career? Then we'll finish up with some recruiting news. A big change in the Utah prep ranks and a top priority candidate for BYU back on the market. We'll delve into that a little bit later on as well. All right, so out of the chute, congratulations are in order to Richie Saunders as well as Egor Demin. Richie, the Big 12's most improved player, an easy shoe-in candidate, should be unanimous to have him make that, but more importantly, also named to the all Big 12 first team. I think matches up exactly with what I had hoped for Richie. I had said this on this podcast. He was trending towards being an all Big 12 honoree. He should have been a first team candidate, and he was. Egor Demin on the all freshman team for the Big 12, VJ Edgecombe from Baylor ultimately won freshman of the year. That's a pretty easy selection there because Edgecombe was lights out all year long for the Bears. But he also was named honorable mention all Big 12. So let me start by saying congratulations to both of those guys. Egor and Richie have been everything BYU could have hoped for. I know some of you would have hoped that Egor was maybe a little bit more than what he has been, but he's still a bona fide NFL draft prospect. Sorry, NFL. We're talking about NFL in a minute. NBA draft prospect, excuse me. He's projected to still be a lottery pick in most mock drafts. Some have dropped him down a little bit lower. But regardless, he has been, I think, everything you could have hoped for, quite honestly, as an 18-year-old freshman coming into BYU. Richie, his game grew by leaps and bounds. He's been an absolute force on offense for BYU. He has grown from a glue guy to a true sixth man of the year candidate to now a bona fide star in one of the best basketball leagues in the country, and very just reward for him to get those two honors. But where did BYU get robbed, Jake? You're probably saying, hey, pay off your tease to start today's show. They got robbed in two different categories. Number one, I believe that Kevin Young had an absolute shout to be Big 12 Coach of the Year. I will also say this. I understand why Houston ultimately garnered a lot of these awards, because when you have the best team and a collection of the best players led by Kelvin Sampson, who's proven to be a very, very good coach over a long and illustrious head coaching career, I understand why you default to giving the awards to the best team in the Big 12 conference. So why do I think BYU got robbed in this regard? Consider where BYU was at in the preseason poll. They were picked 9th. Where was Houston picked? 1st. Houston won the Big 12 last year. They were expected to run it back this year. They did exactly that. Everything that Houston has done, it's not out of the crazy, it's not out of left field, seemingly, for the Big 12. They are a true Final Four contender every single year, speaking of the Houston Cougars. That was before they got in the Big 12, and it will be so long as Kelvin Sampson continues to keep things rolling there in Texas. Why I think that Kevin Young deserved a shout, or at least a shot at the Big 12 Coach of the Year honors, and we don't know what the voting ultimately came down to, but I believe that the way BYU came together in a very short order, remember, Kevin was hired in April last year, if I recall correctly, had to put together a roster essentially on the fly, had to compile a schedule that he has acknowledged the non-conference slate is far below what he will put together in future seasons for the BYU basketball program. He had a team that started the Big 12 campaign 1-3 and 2-4. It felt like the wheels might be coming off this squad, and all they did was rally together and put together an incredible run, most notably an 8-game win streak to complete the regular season. Kevin Young has as legitimate a case to be Big 12 Coach of the Year as a guy like Kelvin Sampson does. Kelvin's won it 5 times, and 5 times in, I think, multiple conferences over his career. He has got a lot of accolades to his credit. This one, you look at Coach of the Year, aren't they supposed to do something spectacular? And yes, what Houston has accomplished is spectacular. They're going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're the heavy favorites to win the Big 12 tournament title this week if they remain motivated enough when they face off against BYU potentially in the semifinals there, and should be a force come March Madness. But the way that BYU came together after losing a coach who once again led them to a 5th place finish last year in a 6th seed, Mark Pope, he jumps and bolts for Kentucky to take over in Lexington. And all of a sudden, Kevin Young comes in to try and pick up the pieces, and he more than picked up the pieces. Leads BYU to a 3rd place finish, improving on last year's finish for the BYU basketball program. I believe that Kevin Young absolutely should have been Big 12 Coach of the Year, considering what he accomplished in his first year at the helm of the BYU basketball program. I don't expect a lot of you to agree with me, especially those who are not BYU fans. I'm sure some Houston fans will be irate. Other ones out there will say, well, what about guys like Iowa State? And you can argue anything you want. But where BYU was projected in the preseason poll versus where they finished up, going from 9th to 3rd, finishing with an 8-game win streak, which is on the nation's longest win streak list right now. I know that Houston's on there as well with 10 straight, but I think what Kevin Young accomplished absolutely should have had him in contention for Big 12 Coach of the Year. The other robbery, I thought, and even more so because I don't think you can argue this one at all, is why in the heck is Mawot Mag not on the all Big 12 defensive team? He is a guy who can guard the positions 1 through 4 on the court, and he can absolutely get it done with impunity. He did it all Big 12 conference season long, and I do not for the life of me understand why Mawot Mag was not honored with this. We have coaches from the Big East where he played, or sorry, Big 10 last year. It was the Maryland coach, if I recall correctly, saying that he is the best defender in college basketball. How in the heck does this guy not get his just due? Because Mawot, his ability to contribute, especially as a defensive stopper for BYU, they don't get where they got this season without his ability to lock up opposing teams' best wing players, and even at times guarding guys who could take him down in the post and outweighed him and were bigger than him. I look at the defensive team: Jaden Quayton's from Arizona State, Jawan Roberts from Houston, Joseph Tugler from Houston, Tamin Lipsey from Iowa State, and then Sincere Harris from West Virginia. Those are all very good and dogged defenders, but I will take Mawot Mag against any one of those guys any single day because, as I mentioned, his versatility to be able to guard the positions 1 through 4 on the court, I would argue that it's as good and it's as valuable, like I said, for a guy like Kevin Young, the value he created for BYU as their head coach. Well, the value that Mawot Mag offered, especially on the defensive side of the court, that was a big miss, it felt like, for Big 12 coaches to not name him to that list. Maybe he would have made all defensive second team, but he absolutely, I thought, should have been a first team honoree, and that's where the robbery comes in for me. I thought there should have been more rewards for BYU's especially fantastic finish to the season. I would have thought it would have gotten them more accolades coming from Big 12 coaches, but here we are. So once again, congratulations to Richie Saunders. Congratulations to Egor Demin. And if my vote counts for anything, which it really doesn't, I would have Kevin Young as Big 12 Coach of the Year and also Mawot Mag as an all Big 12 defensive player, all Big 12 defensive team honoree, because they both were very much deserving of those two honors. All right, we'll flip over to football coming up next. We're taking a trip to the NFL ranks. Is Zach Wilson finally in a spot where he can succeed as an NFL quarterback? We'll delve into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our locked-on college basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada clear-cut Team of the Week are the Duke Blue Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just whipped through the ACC, going 19-1 in ACC play. They were plus 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in league play since Kentucky way back in 1953-1954. Absolutely incredible. So when it comes to Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. That's exactly what the Duke Blue Devils did all season long. It's clear that our Team of the Week is out here to conquer the road ahead with the confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure by going to shopnissanusa.com. Today's show is also brought to you one of our great new friends, local sponsor in Post District. Discover Post District, home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings, the Register, Post House North, Post House South, and the 801 Flats. Each of these residences offers a unique take on luxury urban living with features like waterfall kitchen islands, floor-to-ceiling windows, vaulted ceilings, spacious patios, and walk-in closets. Enjoy premium amenities, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, golf simulator, massive TV wall for sports watch parties, and more, all anchored in a one-of-a-kind community here in our backyard in Salt Lake City. Step outside and find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene with award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Mencho Ramen, Level Crossing, Melancholy Wine Bar, and Sunday's Best just steps away from your front door. Whether you're looking for a studio, 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, or a penthouse, find your perfect home today. Visit Live at Post or call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad for an exclusive incentive. Make sure you mention Locked On Cougar sent you. So once again, go to liveatpost.com or call them today at 801-590-6247. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you're all having a fantastic start to your week here on a Tuesday. All right, so Zach Wilson has signed a fully guaranteed 1-year deal with the Miami Dolphins worth $6 million. Incentives could push it to $10 million if he achieves those in his lone season in South Beach. Now, on its head, you're probably thinking, well, Jake, he's going to be backing up a guy like Tua Tagovailoa. And that's exactly why I think this is the perfect spot for the former BYU signal caller to be calling home this season in the NFL. I don't want to wish any ill feelings towards Tua Tagovailoa, but we have to acknowledge what it is. He has dealt with concussion issues repeatedly over the past 2 to 3 seasons in the NFL. Zach Wilson has signed on to be the chief backup to Tua Tagovailoa. So if you're just going by history, there is going to be an opportunity or opportunities this season for Zach Wilson to step in for Tua as the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. A couple of you messaged me when this deal came out saying, Jake, this is going to be exactly what Zach needs. This is why he needed to go somewhere where he has a chance to play. He needs to follow the Sam Darnold method. Well, yes, he absolutely does need to follow Sam Darnold's legacy because Sam Darnold, remember, number 3 overall pick by, funny enough, the New York Jets, gets cast aside, spends time in Carolina. It just kind of is a walking free agent, just doesn't really a nomad, as it were. Finally lands with the right coach in a guy like Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota and becomes what we all saw from Sam Darnold last year, a really, really solid quarterback. Elite? Question mark, but still, I think an above average, if not good quarterback for an NFL team that could win a bunch of games. His playoff showing left a lot to be desired, but what Zach Wilson needs to take faith in is looking at what Sam Darnold did is, yes, Zach's been a bit of a nomad here. Spent last year playing for the Denver Broncos, was a backup behind Bo Nix, battling with Jarrett Stidham. Well, the Broncos brought back Stidham to be their chief backup behind Nick, so that left Zach kind of out there on the free agent market. This is a great deal, nice money, $6 million fully guaranteed to go to Miami. And yes, you will have to bide your time and wait until something happens to Tua Tagovailoa. But as I mentioned, history suggests that there will be something that happens, unfortunately, because Tua has been a fantastic quarterback when he's been on the field, but those head injuries are no joke. This will allow, in theory, Zach Wilson to go out and show what he has learned during his time being a backup quarterback and show that he is not the quarterback that New York fans came to believe he was as at the tail end of his time with the Jets. The Jets are an absolute joke of a franchise. I will just say that at the outset. They have had so many quarterbacks, including Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson, go through there. And if those guys can't succeed with the New York Jets, who can? Aaron Rodgers couldn't get it done, a former NFL MVP. I know that Rodgers is a little bit washed now, but the bigger point to be made here is that Zach Wilson is in a good spot to rehabilitate his career. And if all goes well, he could be the next Sam Darnold. And we just saw Sam Darnold sign a 3-year, count at $110 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks. I can tell you, I had firsthand knowledge of the interest that franchises like the San Francisco 49ers had in Zach Wilson during the lead up to that NFL draft in 2021. The other thing about this is in the ESPN story, they said to hear that Wilson's pregame workouts with Denver quarterback coach Davis Webb, when he consistently flashed arm strength that made him the number 2 pick in the 2021 NFL draft, became a must watch. Advanced scouts from other teams would be seen keeping an eye on Wilson's work before games late in the season. They were already scouting him, speaking of multiple other NFL teams, saying, okay, maybe, just maybe, this kid still has that arm talent that dazzled us. Remember that throw? Let's look at shown the throw he had in the indoor practice facility in Provo during that pro day. It is still being shown on NFL highlight reels, and it's been used against him, but at the same time, it flashed what Zach could do with that incredible right arm he had. And we all saw it firsthand if you're a Cougar fan during that 2018 to 2020 run that he had as BYU's quarterback. Zach is not a scrub. He has got arm talent. He's got ability. And I think that Miami is the right spot for him to go, learn, back up to a Tonga Vailoa, and if something happens, step in and show that he has worked on his craft. He's a more mature quarterback now. He understands the game at a deeper level, and hopefully goes out and puts on a performance that will have other NFL teams saying, okay, we are in need of a quarterback. Do we gamble once again on the former number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft? There's a lot worse bets I feel like that can be made, and I might be a bit of a homer here in speaking up for Zach Wilson, but I think that this landing spot for him going to the Miami Dolphins, it could not be more tailor-made fit, I think, for him to follow that game plan that Sam Darnold has laid out here for former Jets quarterbacks who got run out of town. I hope it all works out. I hope that Zach goes on to make a bunch of money in the NFL. He's already made a bunch of money because as the number 2 pick, I think it was $35 million he made at least during his time as a New York Jet. So he has banked away a bunch of money. He is well on his way to having the NFL pension in his back pocket. He is recently engaged to his longtime girlfriend. There's a lot going right for Zach Wilson. I think the latest thing is this trip to South Beach for at least one season could be as lucrative as anything else in his NFL career and could set him up to once again cash in with a big money contract down the line. He has got to look at the Geno Smiths, who just recently vacated or traded, I guess I should say, out of Seattle to the Las Vegas Raiders. Look at Sam Darnold and understand that, guys, in that first spell that you get drafted to an NFL franchise, it may not work, but it does not mean that you are a scrub and you are an afterthought. You're not being tossed on the trash heap forever. If you can go out and prove yourself, which I hope he gets that chance with the Dolphins, I think there's a big, big opportunity for him to go out there and become that next reclamation story of NFL quarterbacks, and I hope it all comes to fruition. One other quick shout-out, congratulations to Khyiris Tonga, the former BYU defensive tackle. He also got a one-year deal. He's headed to the New England Patriots. Khyiris doing some big things. He's now played for the Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings, Arizona Cardinals, and now the New England Patriots. And that's a really cool thing to see Khyiris carving out a great role for himself as well and making money along the way and playing the game that these guys love. I can tell you, I know what guys like Zach Wilson and Khyiris, they love the game because they have battled. A guy like Khyiris, to go through 4 different franchises and keep getting contracts means you produce when you're able to on the field. Zach, his story's a little bit different. They're going to be looking for reasons to obviously rehabilitate him and get him back to being the quarterback that he was thought to be coming out in that NFL draft. And 4 years on, I hope it all works out for Zach because I think he has got every opportunity and every ability to go out there and, be that next Geno Smith, the next Sam Darnold. And wow, NFL teams 3 or 4 years after the fact saying, oh, wait, hey, we know this kid. Yeah, I think Zach's absolutely got that in him, and I'll be rooting him on as we move forward here with the NFL season down there in Miami. All right, coming up next, we will flip over to the recruiting side of things for BYU football. A big-time recruit, I should say, in BYU's backyard has come back on the market, but he's also making an interesting position change. What is going on with Bot Mulatalo? We'll make heads and tails of that next, right here as we roll on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Roy. Attention, Cougar fans. Everyone should directly support your favorite BYU athletes and be part of their journey. Now you can. You can do it with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players that you love at BYU. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to athletes representing Brigham Young University. And with Roy, all you got to do is choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute to said player, and get exclusive content directly from the athletes you back as a part of the NIL deal that you're signing. The best part is if your player transfers, you get your money back, so it's a risk-free way to show your support and make sure your voice is heard for our players over at BYU. Support your favorite players and directly help shape the future of BYU athletics and BYU football. I think for most of you, in particular, BYU basketball is also on the list. Essentially, any athlete you're interested in, you can download the Roy app today from the App Store and start backing BYU athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players by getting the Roy app wherever you get it on the App Store. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, why haven't you signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, the inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I am hearing? I don't proclaim to be the BYU insider. There's a bunch of them out there, but I will pass along anything I hear to you guys, and it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. You can respond with your thoughts as well, have one-on-one conversations with myself, and it's just $5 a month to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. And the kicker, a 14-day free trial when you first sign up. You're 2 full weeks before you're charged anything, and just $5 a month afterwards. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, Lone Peak stud Bot Mulatalo, got a 4th star on his recruiting profile, so very much deserved from 24/7 Sports, because Bot is an absolute force for the Lone Peak Knights. He has been that for 2 years now, and figures to be that again this year, but he'll be flipping sides of the field. He was a stud defensive end / just do everything defensive lineman for the Knights. And when he is at his best, Bot was a one-man wrecking crew. Just absolutely incredible. Any of you have watched Bot play, whether it's his highlight reel or been out to watch a Lone Peak game, you have seen Bot play incredible football. He has got an incredible ability, but he has decided that his future is better served to play offensive line. Now, this is very curious to me because Lone Peak, Austin Pay just signed with BYU. And by the way, Austin Pay is headed out on his mission next week, March 17th, if I recall correctly. He's headed to the Ireland, Scotland mission. So congratulations to Austin Pay. Well, he and Jared Smith, who signed with Utah State, were the bookend tackles for Lone Peak this past season. And Bot Mulatalo is moving over to offensive tackle, in theory, I think, to replace a guy like Austin Pay. Now, how does this involve BYU? Well, Bot had been committed to Oregon, had been committed for a few months to the Ducks, but after deciding to make this position change to play offensive line, he has reopened his recruitment. He's not necessarily canceling any opportunity to play with Oregon. He just says with the position change, he wants to take a step back and reevaluate things. And the 24/7 Sports story, as well as other reports, say that BYU and Utah are going to be very much still be in the mix for him as an athlete. The one thing I can say about Bot moving over to offensive tackle is he is an elite athlete, just of athleticism off the charts. And that will serve him well as he makes a transition to tackle. It's not easy to go from playing defensive line where you're reacting to playing offensive line where essentially you're trying to mirror those defensive linemen that you went up against. And a guy like Bot, with his background as a defensive lineman, that will help him as he tries to understand what he's doing as an offensive tackle. Now, how will he play out of a 2 and a 3-point stance? How will he do with his drop steps, being able to pull, all that type of stuff? I'm actually not all that concerned about it because Lone Peak, the one thing that Bart Brockbank has done as head coach at Lone Peak is have elite assistants. That includes former San Francisco 49er and former BYU stud himself, Gary Pay. Yes, Connor's dad, Austin's dad, Trevor's dad. Yeah, Gary Pay is the offensive line coach at Lone Peak High School and has been that for many, many years. Gary is a technician. He absolutely understands offensive line play at a granular level. If there is one position coach in this state at the high school level, I believe they can get a guy like Bot Mulatalo to move from playing kind of a hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle role for Lone Peak to being a star left tackle in 8 months' time. It's Gary Pay. And I trust that he will work hard, speaking of Bot, to work on his craft and become the stud offensive tackle that he wants to be. I think that his height, he's listed at 6'4", 6'5", 275 pounds. That's very good size for an offensive lineman. And as I said, his athleticism, speaking of Mulatalo, it's off the charts. BYU will factor in here because I think BYU can pitch him now saying, okay, you think about this, Bot. We have had our past three offensive tackles at left tackle drafted. Our fourth, in a guy like Caleb Etienne, just recently had a top 30 visit with the Kansas City Chiefs and very much could find himself having his name called at the NFL draft this year. That's 4 for 4. Do you want to make it 5 for 5? Do you want to be the next offensive tackle for BYU drafted in the NFL? Come to BYU, play here. Your older brother committed here once upon a time. Now, Bot's older brother was one of the guys who committed from Snow College to come and play. It was Stone Mulatalo. He played at Skyridge High School. Stone ultimately never enrolled at BYU, but Bot has got really, really good genetics. He's got an incredible makeup. The athleticism at 6'4", 275 to do what he did at defensive tackle, it will serve him well as he makes the transition to playing offensive tackle now. And this could be a very interesting recruiting process for BYU. They could be back in the mix, one of the elite athletes in their backyard on the recruiting scene. USC's in the mix, according to the report. Also, Utah and Oregon still there. So there's some very, very heavy, stiff competition and heavy hitters that BYU will have to fend off. But we're seeing more and more that BYU's ability to directly impact guys with NIL money, obviously be able to prove that they can win games at a high level going 11-2 a season ago. And more importantly, in the case of an offensive tackle like Mulatalo, tell them, hey, we have a direct pipeline to playing at the NFL because we have a track record of getting these guys drafted. That's got to be mighty enticing to a guy like Bot to say, hey, maybe I just want to stick around in Provo and play for the BYU Cougars. So crazy times, but I think that Bot is making a smart move. At the same time, it's a calculated move. He said that there's a history of a Polynesian offensive lineman recently going to the NFL. I think he's looking directly at what guys like Kingsley Suamataia has done with the Kansas City Chiefs. More importantly, he's looking at just other guys around the league and the incredible money that can be made as an offensive tackle at the NFL level. Now, Bot's at least 3 or 4 years away from living that type of a dream, but you look at it and there is every opportunity. And I think the gold standard right now is Penei Sewell. I probably should have mentioned that at the outset, but Penei Sewell, stud right tackle for the Detroit Lions. He is making oodles and oodles of money. There are many people who say that outside of really anybody, there is not a better, speaking of like offensive lineman, there's not a better athlete in general, speaking of Penei Sewell, that plays offensive line in the NFL to this day. You also have guys like Jordan Mailata, who was a former rugby star who just won a Super Bowl as left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. Bot's looking and kind of reading the tea leaves out there and saying, hey, maybe, just maybe, offensive line is my ticket, my meal ticket to going and making a bunch of money playing the game I love. I'm not saying that Bot couldn't be an elite defensive tackle because let's just put it this way. If it doesn't work out at offensive tackle, let's say it doesn't take to the position, whatever the position change doesn't happen, all you do is flip him back to playing that hybrid defensive tackle role at 6'4", 275, 280, whatever he weighs. He has been a one-man wrecking crew for a long time. And if offensive line ultimately isn't for him, flip him back over to the defense and just say, hey, Bot, go make plays. That's the thing about this. This is a two-way opportunity for a star player. And I hope that BYU remains in the mix for the foreseeable future because the fact that Bot is back on the market, that's a really, really nice thing for BYU to go out and pursue him. And fingers crossed they can bring him in because I think Bot would be a really, really nice piece to have in BYU's offensive line room because it sure looks like he is going to max out his potential playing on the offensive side of the football. All right, that is going to do it for this Tuesday edition of the show. As always, thank you for all of your support. Had plans to talk a little bit more about recruiting. I talked about Bot today. We'll get more into that on tomorrow's show. We'll also be out at BYU football practice later this afternoon. You want the insider report, join the Locked On Cougars insider group. You'll get those updates from me via text message as soon as that practice goes final. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars insider group. But more importantly, thank you as always for your guys' support of the podcast. You guys make this thing go. So thank you for downloading it, subscribing to it, rating it, reviewing it, sharing it with your family and friends. And as always, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.